I'm Anil Kumar sharing with you a test question on finding x, y, and z intercepts of a plane. The question before us is determine the x, y, and z intercepts of the plane with vector equation r equals to minus 1, 2, 3 plus s minus 2, 2, 3 plus t times minus 3, 2, 6, where the parameters s and t belongs to real numbers. So we could do this in different ways. One method is you could convert this to the Cartesian form of the equation. The other one is to convert it to parametric form. So we have already done this as a Cartesian form, and that is my tips. You should normally do it with that Cartesian form. Here we will do a method which is normally adopted, since that is kind of simpler, but it is lengthy. Let us write this equation as in the parameter form. So we could write this as x equals to minus 1 minus 2s minus 3t, right, minus 3t, y as equals to 2 plus 2s plus 2t, right, and z equals to 3s 6t plus 6t, right? So this is how we could write x, y, and z in the form of, with the help of these two parameters s and t. Now, if I equate x equals to 0, then what happens to this equation? We get a relation between s and t, right? If I equate this to 0, I get this as 0 equals to minus 1 minus 2s minus 3t, right? Now, if I equate y to 0, in that case, what do I get? I can write this as 2 plus 2s plus 2t. Now here we can simplify and write in terms of s in terms of t, right? So let me do that part here. So what we can do is we can rearrange, and once you rearrange, you can say minus 2 equals to 2 times s plus t, or you could say that s plus t equals to minus 1, or from here you can say s is equals to minus t minus 1. So you can relate s and t by putting y equals to 0 in this form, right? If I put z equals to 0, then what do we get? We could write this equation as 3 plus 3s plus 6t, and from here we can write s in terms of t. So we could write this as 3s equals to minus 3 minus 6t, or s is equals to minus 1 minus 2t, right? So this is when we can place x, y, or z as equals to 0. We can relate one parameter in terms of the other parameter, right? So the idea here is, if you're trying to find x-intercept, so for x-intercept, you know y equals to 0 and z equals to 0, right? Now if y is 0 and z is 0, we know how s and t are related, right? So we say s is equals to minus t minus 1, and also s equals to minus 1 minus 2t, right? So that is how they are related. So we could use this relation and then find s and t. So using these two equations, we can actually solve for t and s, and then substitute in this equation and find the x-intercepts. That's the whole idea, right? So first we just found, when each one is 0, how s and t are related, and then we can, apply this knowledge to simplify and get x and y and z intercepts. So from here we can say if y is 0, then s is equals to minus t minus 1. If z is 0, s is equals to minus 1 minus 2t. That means these two should be equal, right? So from here we'll use equation 1 and equation 2 and find what t is for this condition. So we can write this as minus t minus 1 equals to minus 1 minus 2t, right? Bringing them together, we get minus 1 plus 1 equals to minus 2t plus t, or in this case we have 0 equals to minus t. So t is 0, right? So that means t equals to 0. Now if t is 0, we can substitute t0 here and find what s is. So we know minus t minus 1 equals to s, and if t is 0, then that means s is equals to minus 1, right? So s is equals to minus 1. So once we get that, we can find what x-intercept should be by substituting these values in the equation, correct? So we'll substitute these values in the equation and get x will be equals to, if s will be minus 1, so it's minus 1 minus 2 times minus 1 minus 3 times 0, and that gives us the value of x as equals to minus 1 minus, and minus becomes plus, plus 2, and that is indeed 1, and therefore the x-intercept for us is 1 0 0, right? So that is how you can find x-intercept. Now let us find y-intercept following the same method, right? For y-intercept, you know x is equals to 0 and z equals to 0, right? So you can substitute z equals to 0 means s is equals to minus 1 minus 2t. So you can replace this s with that value, correct? So what we can do is we can utilize these three equations, correct? So we'll sub 2 in 3, right? So we'll sub 2 in 3 to get this solution, correct? So s is equals to minus 1 minus 2t, and here we'll write 0 equals to minus 1 times 2 times minus 2 times this value of s, which is minus 1 minus 2t minus 3t, right? So anyway you can solve, but well, so 0 equals to minus 1, open the bracket, plus 2 plus 4t minus 3t. Now that gives you minus 1 plus 2 is plus 1. When you take it on this side, it's minus 1 equals to 4t minus 1 is t. So t is minus 1, correct? Once you get t equals to minus 1, you can substitute t equals to minus 1 in that equation and find s. So s equals to, we are substituting minus 1 here, minus 1 minus 2 times minus 1, and that gives you plus 2 minus 1 as plus 1, right? So s is plus 1. So when I substitute plus 1 in my equation for s and minus 1 for t, I get y-intercept y as equals to 2 plus 2 times s is 1 for us, plus 2 times t is minus 1, right? So that gives us y equals to 2, and therefore the y-intercept is 0 2 0, to get the idea. So it is helpful to find these zeros first, right? And then use these equations one by one to find x, y, and z intercepts. I hope you appreciate this technique. It's kind of helpful, right? But it's a lengthy way of doing it, right? Anyway, now we are looking for z intercept. That means x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. That means these two equations, correct? Now we will solve these two equations. We have s equals to minus t minus 1, and here we have this equation. So we'll just write 0 equals to minus 1 minus 2 times, instead of s I'll write minus t minus 1, and then we have minus 3t, right? That means plus 2t plus 2 minus 3t, and that means, so I'm showing you different ways of solving the same equation. 1 plus minus 1 plus 2 is plus 1, 2t minus 3t is minus t, so that gives you t equals to 1. If t is 1, you substitute t as 1 in one of these equations and find what s is. So s will be equals to, I'm substituting t as 1, so minus 1 minus 1, which is minus 2. Now to get the z-intercept, we know z is equals to 3 plus 3 times minus 2 plus 6 times t is 1, right? So that gives me 3 plus, minus 6 plus 6, which is 3, right? So the z-intercept is 0 0 and 3. So these are the steps which you could follow, and I've kind of organized it in best possible way so that you could get these intercepts. But this process is very, very lengthy. So my recommendation here is that find normal, right? So normal vector, right? That you could do with cross product of these two. That means minus 2, 2, 3, cross product with minus 3, 2, 6. Get the Cartesian equation, then write the Cartesian equation using the point which is minus 1, 2, 3 and the normal, and then solve for intercepts. So that is method 2, and which is a very preferred method in solving such questions. I'd like you to go through this method, understand, and then choice is yours. Thank you, and all the best.